30 million. That's what New York City is spending on a single grocery store. One store in a city running a 7.3 billion budget deficit. A city whose credit rating just got downgraded. A city where the comptroller says the fiscal situation is the worst he's ever seen. And the man who built the largest independent supermarket chain in Manhattan, a man who started with nothing, who stacked groceries while still in college, just went on national television and said three words that should terrify every New Yorker: I can't compete. Not because his business is failing, because his own government just announced it's coming for his industry, using taxpayer money, paying no rent, paying no taxes. And he's not the only one fighting back. I'm Marcus. Let's get into it. So let's talk about what actually happened, because the way City Hall framed this and the way it actually works are two very different things. April 13th, 2026, Mayor Zoran Mamdani stood in front of a cheering crowd to celebrate his first 100 days in office and made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the grocery industry. The city would open its first government-run grocery store at La Marqueta, a historic marketplace in East Harlem. The pitch sounded simple: a store that sells groceries at wholesale prices, no rent, no property taxes, and a private operator running the day-to-day but with one mission: undercut every private store in the neighborhood. Mamdani told the crowd he looks forward to the competition. May the most affordable grocery store win. He promised eggs would be cheaper, bread would be cheaper, grocery shopping would no longer feel like an unsolvable equation. Bernie Sanders showed up to cheer him on. The crowd loved it. But then a reporter asked a very basic question: how much will a cucumber cost at your store? And the mayor's answer was stunning. He said he couldn't give an exact price. He couldn't even estimate it. The man promising to revolutionize grocery shopping in America's largest city could not tell you the price of a single vegetable. And that's when John Catsimatidis entered the war. Now, if you don't know who Catsimatidis is, you need to, because this isn't some hedge fund manager complaining from a penthouse. This man was born on a Greek island, came to America as an infant. His father was a busboy in Harlem. While he was still at NYU, he started working at a grocery on 137th Street. By 1971, he had his own shop on the Upper West Side, one store. From there, he built Red Apple Group into one of the largest private conglomerates in New York. Acquired Gristedes in 1986, then D'Agostino's. Today, he runs the largest independent supermarket chain in Manhattan. Over 50 stores, thousands of employees. Forbes puts his net worth at roughly $4.8 billion. He built it all from a grocery aisle. And now the city he helped build is telling him they're going to compete against him with his own tax dollars. Catsimatidis didn't hold back. He wrote a Wall Street Journal op-ed calling Mamdani's plan delusional. He compared it to the breadlines of the Soviet Union. He compared Mamdani to Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez. He said the plan would collapse the food supply, kill private industry, and destroy everything the grocery ecosystem has built. He pointed to Venezuela, where government food programs led to empty shelves and citizens waiting hours for bread that might not even be there. He threatened to close, sell, or franchise every single Gristedes location in New York City. He said he'd move his entire corporate headquarters to New Jersey. Trump weighed in, calling Catsimatidis a great guy and warning about the city taking over private businesses. And then Catsimatidis went further. He said something that cuts to the core of this entire debate. He said he wants bureaucrats to decide what you eat, when you eat, and where you get it from. That's not progressive. That's oppressive. But here's what makes this bigger than one man's grievance, because Catsimatidis is not fighting alone. The pushback against this plan is coming from every corner of the grocery industry. Fernando Mateo, head of United Bodegas of America, which represents roughly 25,000 bodega workers across the city, called the plan a disaster. He warned these few government stores would create chaos, long lines, and solve nothing. Antonio Pena, president of the National Supermarket Association, which represents 450 independent grocery stores in New York, called Mamdani's plan a slap in the face. He said his members already operate at razor-thin margins in a city where running a store is extremely expensive. And now the government wants to open a competitor around the corner that pays none of the costs they pay every month. The National Grocers Association released a formal statement urging officials to enforce existing antitrust laws rather than launch a taxpayer-funded competitor. They want the Robinson-Patman Act used to crack down on price discrimination, not a government store playing by completely different rules. And here's the fundamental problem that nobody in City Hall wants to address. These city-run stores will pay zero rent, zero property taxes. The Bodega across the street, the Gristedes down the block, the family-owned deli on the corner, they pay both every single month. That's not competition. That's the government putting its thumb on the scale, while the private businesses that actually fund city services through their taxes get crushed by a competitor that doesn't have to play by the same rules. Now imagine you own a bodega in East Harlem. You've been there 15 years. You pay rent, property taxes, licensing fees, health inspections. Workers' comp. Your margins are razor thin because grocery is one of the most brutal businesses in America. Average profit margin in grocery sits around 1 to 3%. One bad month and you're underwater. And then the city opens a store around the corner that pays none of those costs, sells at wholesale, and has unlimited public funding behind it. How do you survive that? You don't. And the irony of it all is devastating because the very food deserts Mamdani says he wants to fix could get worse if private stores that currently serve those communities pack up and leave. If Catsimatidis follows through and pulls out of Manhattan, that's over 50 stores gone. That's checkout workers, stock clerks, delivery drivers, supplier contracts, all of it. Dried up. Now let's talk about the number that exposes the entire thing. Because remember, when Mamdani campaigned on this plan, the total budget for all 5 stores across all 5 boroughs was $70 million. That's what he promised voters. 5 stores, $70 million. The first store alone is now projected to cost $30 million, nearly half the entire budget consumed by one location. A Manhattan Institute analysis estimated that even with New York's sky-high union construction costs, a standard 25,000 square foot grocery store should cost roughly $15 million to build. So, where's the other $15 million going? Nobody is answering that question, and the store won't even be operational until 2029 at the earliest. Mamdani said he hopes to open the first city-owned store somewhere across the 5 boroughs by late 2027, but City Hall still hasn't selected a private operator to run the La Marqueta location. They're planning to release requirements this summer. For a store, the mayor promised would be up and running by next year. And all of this is happening while the city's finances are collapsing. The budget gap stands at $7.3 billion across 2 fiscal years. Comptroller Mark Levine called it the worst fiscal challenge he has ever seen. Moody's revised the city's credit outlook from stable to negative for the first time since the pandemic, citing structural imbalances and reduced financial flexibility. The city's operating surplus collapsed by 94% in a single year. Revenues growing at 2%, expenditures at 4.5%, and Mamdani's solution to close the gap, a 9.5% property tax increase, the first hike in over a decade. That doesn't just hit homeowners. Landlords pass that cost directly to renters. In a city where a $3,000 a month apartment could jump to $3,200 overnight, while you're paying more in rent, the city is spending $30 million on a grocery store that pays no taxes, still has no operator, and won't open for 3 years. And what did the people in charge actually say? That's the infuriating part. When Moody's downgraded the outlook, Mamdani called it premature. He blamed the deficit on former Mayor Eric Adams. When the city council speaker rejected his property tax hike, he pushed back the budget deadline. His administration is banking on Albany sending billions in state aid. But the governor has shown no signs of agreeing to the tax increases Mamdani wants. And when a reporter asked Catsimatidis what he'd tell struggling families about rising grocery prices, his answer was blunt. He told them to deal with it. So on one side, you have a billionaire grocer telling families high prices are just what it costs. On the other side, you have a mayor spending $30 million on a single store while proposing the largest property tax hike in a generation. Nobody in this fight is actually solving the problem. But this isn't just about New York. Kansas City tried this exact model. The city funded a grocery store in an underserved neighborhood. It struggled from day one. It lost money consistently. Foot traffic never materialized the way planners projected. It eventually closed. Catsimatidis pointed to that failure specifically. He said this is what happens when government tries to run a business it doesn't understand. But Mamdani dismissed it. On Meet the Press, he said the Kansas City model worked. He pointed to a Chicago feasibility study that called municipal grocery stores not only feasible, but pressing and urgent. The problem is, a feasibility study is not a functioning store. It's a PowerPoint presentation. Atlanta opened its first municipal grocery store last year. Chicago has plans in the works. Boston is exploring the same model. The question of whether government should compete directly with private grocery stores is spreading across the country. And the pattern is always the same. High costs, fiscal strain, government expansion, private sector retreat. If your city is facing an affordability crisis, this playbook is heading your way. So let's bring it home. A man who came to this country with nothing, built a grocery empire from a single store, and is now being told his own city government will compete against him using the tax dollars his businesses helped generate. No rent, no taxes, a $30 million price tag for one store while the city can't close a $7.3 billion deficit. A credit downgrade. A property tax hike coming for every renter and homeowner, an operator that hasn't even been selected yet, and a mayor who, when asked the price of a cucumber at his own store, couldn't give an answer. That's not policy. That's a warning sign. And whether you're in New York or watching from somewhere else, this affects you. Because when private businesses leave, jobs disappear, tax bases shrink, and the cost of everything goes up for whoever's left. I want to hear from you. Do city-run grocery stores actually work, or is this the beginning of something much worse? Drop it in the comments, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that actually affect your wallet. I'm Marcus. I'll see you in the next one.